to the Themes to Be Seen podcast. We explore films and break them down, mostly films that use symbolism and visual devices to tell their story that may not be as easily understood on a first viewing. Hopefully you can listen to us and have a better appreciation for the film after you hear it. My name is Matt Klaus. Our film today is Drive from 2011, starring Ryan Gosling and Carey Mulligan, and directed by Nicolas Winding Refn, who's actually one of our favorite directors.
And this is based on the 2005 novel by James Salas.
Did you ever read the novel?
No.
I didn't either.
I didn't know there was a book until we watched the special features.
I didn't either. If anybody has read the book and they're listening to this, comment, tell us some differences, some contrasts. That would be really interesting from somebody who has read it. The opening of the film is really cool. I'm a fan of the font for all the credits in this.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very...
I am too, for obvious reasons.
I don't even know what to call it. It's almost like...
I don't know, but it's all pink.
It's almost like an 80s retro style of long script.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very pleasing to the eye. It's all pink. There's a lot of deep blues and pinks. You get that a lot from Refn because he uses these very contrasting colors, which we learned from the special features on our Blu-ray is because he has a form of color blindness. So you get these very contrasting, these very deep colors.
It's one of the best opening scenes of all time, I would think.
The original, like, rubbery scene?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It explains a character way better than an expositional scene where somebody's talking, if you pay attention.
And then you have that cool opening music by the Chromatics. It's an exciting opening.
Do you know the name of that song?
Tick of the Clock.
Okay, so the Chromatics, Tick of the Clock. Go ahead and check that out. Tell us what you think in the comments also.
Mm-hmm. The soundtrack of this movie was really big when it came out.
I still listen to it.
I do too. I went to a concert for the soundtrack.
That would be kind of cool. You said that the one group, there's a particular song in this that gets featured a couple times, and we'll explain the symbolism of it when we get there in the film, but there's one particular song that's just beautiful, and you said that's the group that performed at the concert you went to?
What was the name?
I'm going to look it up.
I forget the name of them, but yeah, it was a show at the Crowfoot in Detroit in the Pike Room. It was pretty exciting. The one group there was called College. I think they were called Electric Youth. College was like a DJ.
Yeah, Electric Youth.
And then they did the song
singers
together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what Google said.
Yeah.
Thanks, Google.
The soundtrack in this movie,
You get this awesome song that also means a lot by one of my favorite artists, Kavinsky. And if you've never listened to Kavinsky, he does a form of music called retrowave, which is designed to sound like 80s movie and video game music. They do a lot of really cool things with retro sounds and drum machines that you don't hear anymore.
I think throughout the film, the soundtrack is used also as a way of telling the story because there's such little dialogue in some of the scenes that if you listen to the lyrics of the songs that are playing, they're kind of telling you like what the characters are thinking.
Definitely.
And
we'll actually point those out at certain points once we get to those. So let's start breaking down the film itself. The opening immediately explains what he does and how he does it, and that when he's working, he's always wearing the scorpion jacket. Now, the scorpion jacket is another piece of symbolism. It's actually one of my favorite pieces of symbolism in any film. I want to buy one.
A very iconic look, I think.
I want one. I want one really bad.
I think this is the movie because for years Ryan Gosling was just seen, I think, mostly as like this heartthrob, and this is the first movie I really remember where people were like, okay, this guy is cool. Like, he's just cool. He's stylish. He's calm and collected.
I feel like this is also the first film where he was taken seriously as a legitimate actor.
Yeah.
He up until
before he had done like Half Nelson, I believe he was nominated for an Oscar for that, but this is...
I feel like up until this, The Notebook overrode everything else
Maybe.
he did. And it was sad because now he's one of my favorite actors. He's been in so many amazing films where he put his entire performance on the line of every film, and it's awesome.
He just seems like a very interesting person as well. For a little while, he had this like goth horror band called Dead Man's Bones, and we still listen to them.
We do. I listen to him at work.
Yeah.
He in this opening scene, he's wearing the jacket and he's explaining. It's almost all in voiceover. You see him for a minute, explaining how he does his work. 5 minutes on either side. I'm not going to sit in with you. I don't carry a gun. I just drive. And that theme rolls over into a couple scenes. It's almost like he doesn't even do it for the money of the jobs he pulls. He does it for the excitement of giving him a challenge while he's driving. And we see that in this scene. It's set in the LA area where he explains there's 100,000 streets in this city, and it would be impossible to drive them all.
There's like 2,000 heists a year. I will give credit, the lighting and everything is just so good. It makes LA almost seem majestic in a way. It made me want to go there.
A lot of lighting, especially in this opening scene, just so that Refn established it, is done by street light and stoplight. Most of the time when you see his face, it's in red light or it's in passing street light, which is not something I think I'd ever seen before this film, and it's definitely not something I've ever seen anybody do since it.
Also, another thing you kind of notice right away, there's like hardly any exterior shots of the car. It's mostly interior, and I think that's just, it's like a symbolism of who he is, because he's doing, like, he is what he does. He's a driver. He just drives. There's even shots later in the movie where he's not really doing anything. He just leaves his apartment to go and drive at night.
That is something, a main symbol in this opening scene, where he talks to these guys, he explains what he does, he turns on a basketball game on the radio, and he turns it up really loud at the same time as his police scanner. And he does all this for a reason. It may seem ridiculous, and the sound of it, when you first hear it on the movie, it almost sounds cacophonous. Like there's these two things working against each other, the police scanner and the basketball game on at the same time, and it's almost hard to... It confuses you, but I think that's the point, is that he's so focused on paying attention to both that it doesn't confuse him. He knows what he's doing.
He has the whole plan laid out. We initially see him, he's very calculated and focused and in control. Everything seems to happen perfectly for him. Like, nothing goes wrong.
These two guys do this bank robbery, and the first guy comes out of the bank, and they sit there for quite a while waiting for the second guy. He has exactly 5 minutes. And if you time it out, I think the guy actually gets in the car. I was looking at the time slider on our Blu-ray, and I think the guy actually gets in the car at 4 minutes and 50 seconds. So he only had 10 seconds left before a driver was going to leave him. Oh, that's another thing. This character never gets a given name. We never get a given name for this character.
Or a background, really.
He's just called Driver, or from another character, just calls him kid.
Yep.
He stays very calm. During this heist, there are times, I wrote down in my notes, that he's so calm he realizes that stopping the car in certain spots buys them way more time than driving really fast in any particular direction.
Mm-hmm.
He stops behind this truck and he kind of waits to see, listens to the police scanner to see what they're doing. And then when he pulls off, he doesn't even really pull off that fast. You'd expect him to slam on the gas, but he just starts driving normally.
Mm-hmm.
And they get a while before the police even suspect the car that they're in. And it takes a long time to even, like you said, even see an exterior shot of this car, which his buddy, Shannon, gives him.
Uh-huh.
And it's a Chevy Impala, which he says is the most popular car in California. Completely inconspicuous.
Yeah.
But his buddy Shannon is...
Bryan Cranston?
It is Bryan Cranston.
Yeah.
I was thinking of what he does for a living in the word.
He's a car mechanic.
Mechanic. That's
Yeah.
the word I was. That's the word I was looking for. He's a mechanic, and he said that he supercharged this particular Impala.
Mm-hmm.
And this is all seen kind of in flashback during the scene of the robbery.
Yeah. So we pretty much get the idea that Ryan Gosling is capable of doing these crazy stunts and stuff, but the initial chase, it's still exciting, but we don't really see any craziness yet.
It's more on him. It focuses on his face, and part of the storytelling is...
It's all on his face.
70% of the storytelling in the movie is on his face. But in this particular scene, if you're watching, the police are chasing them. There are helicopters. Mm-hmm. There are cars. He actually stops at an intersection where there's a police car right in front of him, and he keeps this calm that you'd think no one would be able to keep.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of reviews I saw early on when this movie came out said that his performance was wooden, but really it's the performance of the character, because the character's not scared at all.
He hardly moves. The only thing you really see moving are his eyes, like darting back and forth, looking into the rear view, and then there's so many moments during the movie where it's almost like it looks like the movie is paused because he's so still.
We were pausing the movie while taking our notes, and then we would unpause the movie, and I didn't know whether or not I hit the button hard enough, because there are moments of stillness in this movie that are eerie but beautiful at the same time.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so he's listening to the police scanner. When he finally makes some room between him and the police, which he kind of allows them to stay close for a while, and then he finally makes some room, and then the basketball game and the police scanner at the same time starts to make sense when you realize that the game is just ending. There's this fantastic finish, which actually they dropped the name Blake Griffin playing for the Clippers. and Blake Griffin scores the final bucket for the Clippers. Crowd goes wild. Everybody's leaving the stadium, and he pulls into one of the parking establishments for the Clippers stadium and gets out of the car.
Yeah.
One of the things that you'll notice is that he gets out of the car and he puts on another jacket over the scorpion jacket and a baseball hat, and he leaves the two bank robbers in the car. He doesn't even say, all right,
his work is done.
His work is done. He gets out, closes the door, and he walks away. He says nothing to them. And this is where we get our actual opening credits.
And this is where we get the Kavinsky track.
Night Call.
And there's those just awesome shots of him driving around the city.
Night Call, actually I wrote down in my notes, says a lot about... There's a lot of foreshadowing in the lyrics of Night Call for the film. What I failed to say in our intro is that this is one of the films that Refn considers his transformation trilogy. So those three films would be Drive, Valhalla Rising, and Neon Demon. And in this one, Driver goes through a transformation. And Night Call kind of foreshadows that if you listen to the lyrics. and the feel of the music that Kavinsky made really puts you in the mood for how the film is acted and the pacing of it excellently.
Mm-hmm.
The Scorpion Jacket, for a long time, I don't think there is ever a time where the scorpion on either the front or the back is not directly facing camera,
Mm-hmm.
which is a big piece of symbolism because it shows you where that field of not of him as a character, it's his identifier as a character. He is the scorpion in the story that we'll get to later.
Yeah, because Ryan Gosling hardly talks in this movie. And then there are times where he does, and it's barely audible.
It's not that he's mumbling, he just speaks with this very low,
Yeah.
very quiet voice,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of makes you listen.
Exactly.
It makes you pay attention.
Yeah.
We see him with his back to the camera, or in the scene after the bank robbery, he's coming up the elevator, and he has the scorpion jacket on his shoulder.
Yep.
And he's profiled at the camera, so the scorpion is still facing camera.
Mm-hmm.
And it always shows you where he's at as a character, where his mindset is at as a character. He just got done with this bank robbery. He feels like empowered. He feels like he is strong. He feels powerful in this moment. And that's what the scorpion shows us most of the time with his jacket.
Yeah.
The evolution of the jacket over the course of the movie really tells us where he's at as a character, and you'll hear us reference that over and over and over, but it is the most important thing in the film.
And then this is where we initially see Irene as well. He's walking towards the elevator, and she is walking off, and it's kind of similar to the final shot of them together as well, where he's on the elevator and she's getting off.
It's
and
almost literally the
yeah,
opposite.
Yeah.
Irene, played by Carey Mulligan,
Uh-huh.
who I don't think I've seen in anything else.
She's been in a lot. The Llewyn Davis inside.
Oh, inside Elwyn Davis.
Yeah.
And
she's
yeah,
married to the front man for Mumford and Sons.
Yes.
She's been in a ton of stuff.
I guess I just never noticed her. Like
she's more of like a character actress.
She's a character actress, and she's very different in every film. The only way to really... You can't see the characters in this movie and then see the actors in other movies and automatically identify them other than Ryan Gosling.
Yeah. Like when this first came out in 2011, no one really had an idea who Oscar Isaac was. I didn't know who he was, and then years later I realized, oh hey, that was Oscar Isaac in that movie.
Yes. Oscar Isaac's character becomes very important later on. So he passes her in the hallway. They notice each other. They kind of make eye contact for a second, but he looks directly away, goes right into his apartment.
Yeah.
Then we cut to driver standing. He's wearing a police uniform, and you're like, wait, what's going on? Bryan Cranston's character, who is his friend named Shannon, he's kind of his coach, kind of his mechanic,
he took him
mentor.
in. Because we learned that Ryan Gosling was probably on the run from something in the past, and he just turned up one day. So Bryan Cranston hired him, and he makes a joke that he's been
taking advantage
of him
ever since.
Yeah.
And he laughs about it, but the way Bryan Cranston plays it, you hear him laugh about it, and you go, is he joking?
He's been, like, exploiting him.
Right.
He jokes, yeah.
Is he joking?
Because he's been, like, hiring him to drive these criminals around at night in his cars.
And we learn a lot more about Shannon later on. But in this scene, he says, the director wants you to flip the car. Are you comfortable with that? Which we hear Shannon make sure Driver's comfortable a lot in the film, but in this sense, we learn that Driver is a stunt driver for movies when they're not pulling these jobs. His cover is as a stunt driver for movies.
Yeah.
He puts on a rubber latex mask that looks like an extra that we see that must be the actual actor from the film.
Right.
We are to assume.
Mm-hmm.
He puts on this latex mask to do the stunt, pulls it off perfectly.
Yeah, like nothing can go wrong for this character.
As long as he's in a car, nothing can go wrong.
Yeah.
Where was I? Oh, he goes to the supermarket directly after the stunt goes great. Shannon gives him a high five, tells him how awesome he is, and then we cut to a supermarket where he's not wearing his jacket. He's outside of his home. He's outside of it, but he's in the supermarket, which to me makes me feel like when he's walking around the supermarket, he feels like a normal person.
Mm-hmm.
He feels like himself. There's nothing, his mind is calm, and he's just looking for food. And while he's in the supermarket, he runs into the Irene character and her son.
Benicio.
His name is Benicio.
Mm-hmm. And you can tell he's curious about them, and it seems like he wants to interact, but then he turns away from it.
He walks around the corner of one of the aisles in the supermarket, and he gets very close to them, and then he walks the other direction.
Yeah. And then he's outside waiting by his car, and is this where her car
breaks
down?
Her car's overheated.
Yeah.
She's got the hood up, and there's no dialogue here, but we see him walk over.
Mm-hmm.
We see him walk over, and he drives them home from there.
Yeah, and then the elevator up, they live on the 4th floor together. They're like 3 apartments away from one another, and he and Benicio seem to have this automatic bond. They're just staring like at each other in the elevator the whole time. And
we see that, we see them having a staring contest.
Yeah.
And Benicio loses.
Mm-hmm.
She invites him in. She gives him a glass of water, and this is where we get one of the few scenes of explanatory dialogue in the whole movie.
Mm-hmm.
They start speaking, and she points out a picture with Benicio's father. His name is Standard, and Standard Gabriel.
Yeah.
Is his full name, and he's played by Oscar Isaac, and he says, well, where is he? And she explains that this character's in prison.
Yeah. And then she's very inquisitive. She's asking him a lot of questions, and this is where she finds out he's a movie stunt driver, and she's instantly like, well, isn't that dangerous? And it seems like he wants to maybe impress her, but wants her to feel safe, and he's just like, oh, it's just a part-time thing.
Yeah, it's
like,
not a big deal.
Yeah, he doesn't want to seem dangerous like the husband.
This is the scene, for me, where we notice that his clothes are immaculately pressed.
Mm-hmm.
His hair is always perfectly placed.
Yeah.
He's absolutely clean-shaven and smooth-skinned. And that is actually a part of the character. That symbolism changes over the course of the film, and it is the evolution of the character changes as his image changes, and it does make a difference later on in the film.
I think he's just very isolated. There's a lot of themes of isolation and loneliness in this movie, and he lives such a controlled life. He's doing pretty much the same exact things every day and letting nothing else in, so he just seems so, in control of every little thing and so put together.
Which directly after that conversation he has with her, we see him, again wearing the jacket, just standing in a floor-to-ceiling window staring out over the city. Mm-hmm. And it does speak to that isolation. Mm-hmm. It does speak to that loneliness, where he feels this power, he feels this way about himself, but it also is what makes him feel lonely.
Right.
The next time we see Shannon. He's talking to a mob boss. We don't have a name for this gentleman yet, but we learn that his name is Bernie Rose, and he's played by Albert Brooks. Now, Albert Brooks playing a bad guy is going to be ridiculous for some people. If this is the first time you've seen the film, you're going to hear him speaking and go, why does that voice sound familiar? Because it's Marlin from Finding Nemo.
Yeah.
And in this movie, he is not such a good guy.
Yeah, this character, though, it's so multi-dimensional because he's basically like the villain of the movie, but you can also tell he doesn't necessarily want to be the bad guy. It's just the life that he's in. A lot of these characters are living a life that they can't get out of, or they're
feel
just
like
stuck
they have
with the consequences. Like Shannon has a limp because his pelvis was broken due to a bad deal that he had with Bernie. And Nino, who is played by Ron Perlman, which you'll find out more later on in the movie. But most of the characters, other than Irene, it just seems like they've had a hard past.
Albert Brooks said in the special features on the Blu-ray, if you watch, that to make this character seem more soulless, he said he felt too much like somebody's nice uncle, so what he did was he shaved his eyebrows off.
Yeah.
And then he purposefully powdered his cheeks to make him almost look not gaunt, but like a person that doesn't exist. Like he almost looks reptilian.
Yeah.
Not human. And it speaks to his commitment to the character because he is also excellent in this movie. We see this scene. Shannon is talking to Bernie and asking for money for a stock car so that he can have... He wants to buy a racing car. He wants Bernie to buy a racing car. And then he wants to have driver drive. And that would be his main source of income. He would want to work up the circuits. And he asked him for $430,000. Bernie is hesitant. The very first thing he does is flip him off. Which we learn that Bernie's also a very particular person. Because in this scene, he's eating Chinese food. And there's somebody bringing him things. And every time somebody brings him something, it's almost like it's not right. You didn't get it right. Yeah. Where is this? Where is that?
And he's eating this Chinese food in Nino's pizzeria.
Yes.
So
if you ever see an old guy eating Chinese food in a restaurant that is not serving Chinese food, stay away from that old guy.
Yeah, so that's basically how we meet Ron Perlman. He comes in, he's like, why are you eating that in my pizzeria?
He looks at Shannon, and we learn a little bit about the Nino character when he sits down, because he looks at the Shannon character and says, get the fuck out of here, I gotta talk to my partner.
Yeah.
Very dismissively. Ron Perlman plays this guy awesomely because Ron Perlman is the tough guy in real life. He plays Nino as the tough guy. The guy that you can't even talk to.
Yeah, he's just so mean.
So we go through that interaction, and when that's over, we cut straight to a racetrack. We see Driver driving this stock car.
Which, it's funny to me because I'm pretty sure Shannon didn't even discuss any of this with him. It was just like, oh, this is our next ordeal. Like, I'm going to have you do this.
And you kind of get, it's a shocking noise. The sound of the stock car is audioed really loud right away. And then they cut to Driver's face, and he looks like he's about to fall asleep. He's got a pair of sunglasses on and a toothpick in his mouth. He has no helmet on, and he's probably driving 150 miles an hour. This is not fazing him at all.
And he's not impressed with Bernie. He doesn't seem intimidated. He doesn't seem afraid of anything. That's my email.
Her phone just went
and off. I'm gagging right now because Alvis is in here sleeping, and oh my god,
the dog is passing gas in the studio right now. And it's kind of ridiculous. So he gets out of the stock car and he walks over, and Shannon is giving his pitch to Bernie.
Oh, he's trying so hard.
This is how much it would take. This is how much it could cost, and Bernie is not listening to Shannon whatsoever.
Yeah.
But when Driver walks up, and this is a super important line, 2 lines of dialogue. Driver walks up, and Bernie puts his hand out to shake his hand. Driver responds with, "I'm sorry, my hands are dirty," and Bernie says, "Don't worry, mine are too."
Yeah.
Which he says this in a business suit with what looks to be a $130,000 ring on.
Yeah.
And he says, "Don't worry, my hands are dirty too." So Driver shakes his hand. After this is another telling moment for Bernie and what he thinks of other people, because he sees an opportunity in Driver, whereas when he says that he'll pay for the car, Shannon says thank you so much and puts his hand out.
Well, he offers him much less than what he wanted, and he also wants 70%.
He wants 70%.
I think,
yeah.
But Shannon is just so desperate. He's like, yeah, and then he holds his hand out to shake his hand, and
Bernie just looks at him in his face.
Yeah,
he
just rejects him.
Which the dichotomy between putting his own hand out to shake Driver's hand and then refusing Shannon really says something about the character and what he thinks about people.
Mm-hmm.
He sees an opportunity in Driver. He sees Shannon as a nuisance.
Yeah.
And that's how he perceives people.
Because
what
I
he can
think,
get from them.
like, Shannon just has this way of screwing things up because Bernie says he's never had good luck. So I don't think he trusts Shannon to do anything.
No.
And there's just no respect.
You really can't blame him, because if you pay attention to Bryan Cranston's acting here, which Bryan Cranston has never done poorly in a role. I feel like he's been given poor roles and done his best with it. But Bryan Cranston is one of the great actors of our generation, and I feel like in this performance he really plays Shannon to where he wants the audience not to trust him. He wants the audience to see how shady Shannon can be, but he still wants to show that Shannon cares about Driver.
Right.
From here, we go back to Shannon's garage.
Yeah.
And in Shannon's garage, Irene brings her car. And this is where we hear the conversation that Shannon has with Irene about he walked in, what does he say, 6 years ago or something?
Yeah, I don't remember.
I don't remember the amount of time, but he does say he walked in, I gave him a test, he blew my mind, and I've been paying him much less than he's worth ever since. And everybody laughs, and then you listen. You kind of play it over in your head again, and you realize he's not joking. He really is taking advantage of Driver in more than just paying him to work in his mechanic shop.
So, her car is going to be in the shop for a few days, and Shannon is like, "Well, how about I'll let the kid drive you home?" And so most of the scenes up to this point have been shot at either night or during the day when it's overcast.
Almost gray filter.
Yeah.
Almost gray filter.
And this is the first time he doesn't just drive them home. They go driving around, and the sun is shining.
It's one of the first times you see him smile.
Yeah.
He said he looks at her and he smiles.
Yeah.
Actually, it is the first time you see him smile. Up until now, he's had this very stoic face.
It's like, and he's very boyish. It's like a brand new experience for him.
He looks at her and he says, "Do you want to see something cool?"
Yeah.
And we see him with his sports car doing tricks in an aqueduct. Like he's putting 2 wheels up on the side of the aqueduct, and he's driving fast and kind of fishtailing the back of his car on purpose.
They're away from the city.
They find a stream. Yeah.
And almost, this scene looks like a completely different movie. It's very sunny, and it's just the 3 of them, and then this is where we have the Real Human Being song playing.
It's called A Real Hero.
Real Hero.
Which makes a lot of sense. it speaks to, when we were talking about the lyrics telling the story, this speaks to Driver now feeling like he belongs to being a person. This is Driver feeling like he could do something good for someone else. He wants to be a hero. He knows he's not a good guy per se.
Yeah.
But he wants to be a hero somehow. And in this moment, he feels like that's possible. It's sunny. Only one other time in the whole film do you see sun like this, where it's almost beautiful, and it's shot with this clear camera and this beautiful contrast on the characters. When they get back to the apartment building from this day out, we see Driver carrying Benicio, and he has him laying with his head over his shoulder, covered by the scorpion jacket.
Yes, like he's the protector.
So from now on, we know that part of Driver is meant to protect Irene and Benicio. Like that's the moment where he's vowing for that to be that reason.
Yeah. And there's such little dialogue between them at times. That scene afterward, after Benicio goes to bed, and then he's sitting by the window, and they're just making direct eye contact and smiling and hardly saying anything.
Yeah. They don't say much. The acting in the scene is what gives the motivations. It's what gives the feelings. Part of the criticism that I saw, again, about this film when it first came out, is that during the scenes, there wasn't much dialogue. The movie wasn't handed to the audience. So, I guess what we're saying in this moment is really pay attention to the faces. And the way she kind of leans towards him, and how he has a smile on that is unusual for the rest of the film.
And they don't do anything, because, I mean, she's married still,
and he is understanding of that. He doesn't want to be too aggressive. He doesn't want to be aggressive towards her. He just wants her company. It's an innocent thing that you wouldn't expect when you look at the rest of the film. It's such an innocent love between people that it contrasts the entire of relationships in the rest of the film.
Yep.
Where was I? Right after this is you see them driving together. And she takes his hand first. And
then, you can tell time has been passing by. They're spending more and more time together. He and Benicio are getting really close. Like, usually they're always, like, touching. Like, Benicio will be sitting next to him or have his legs draped over him. Like, he's becoming this new father figure.
After we see this time passing, the next scene we finally see the car that Bernie bought for Shannon. And when you look at it, it's not the greatest stock car. It's kind of beat up. It's kind of ugly. I mean, it's not like movie beat up where you look at it and go, ugh. But you look at it and you think to yourself, that doesn't look like a competitive car in a stock car race.
And so Nino is there. He's making comments about
complaining.
Yeah.
And he says there's no way that car is going to win in a race. Look at it. Bernie's response is another existential thing this character says when he says it doesn't matter what you think you're looking at. It's what's on the inside.
Yeah, he's like, this is just the shell.
This is just the shell is the important part of the sentence. And Nino goes over, he sees another car and makes a crazy sentence. I don't even remember what it is. Motherfucking pussy catching car right there. And Bernie looks at Shannon and says, sell him the car.
Yeah.
And those two leave screen, and now we have Driver and Bernie speaking again. And anytime Driver and the Bernie Rose character are speaking, I don't know what it is there was a lot of chemistry between Ryan Gosling and Albert Brooks, because you feel this tension.
Yeah, you can tell, like, Driver just really has no interest in talking to him, And the more Bernie talks, it's like Driver's realizing this guy isn't a good guy.
No.
And maybe he's scared of what maybe he was running from in the past is going to come back. Like he's going to end up in another similar situation because the look in his eyes just it's full of like worry.
Yes. From here we go back to Irene's apartment.
Yeah.
In what I think is one of the most important moments for the symbolism of the dialogue in this film, and it's the conversation. Is one of I think it's the only conversation we actually hear between Driver and Benicio. And they're watching Shark Week on TV, and Benicio says it's a bad guy, and Driver says, "How do you know it's a bad guy?" And Benicio says, "It's a shark." Driver says, "What, are all sharks bad guys?" And he goes, "Yeah. Why would they be?" And you kind of see this smile on Driver's face, but you feel like he's faking it for Benicio.
Yeah, because then there's that shot of Irene letting the babysitter in, and then he's got that like heartbroken look in his eyes, like maybe I'm a shark.
I'm a shark.
Yeah, I'm not actually a good guy. I'm just kind of faking it right now because he's got a lot of secrets, and
deep down, that conversation lets him know there's no way what he thinks is happening could actually work out.
Yeah.
And we hear a phone ringing, and this is one of my favorite cuts in the film, because we hear a phone ringing, and there is no actual answer to the phone ring. And this is something a lot of movies don't do, which makes more sense to me, is the film cuts, and the phone stops, like, the phone ringing, we go to a different scene of Irene and Driver in the car, and this is where she tells him, "That was my husband's lawyer. He gets out in a week."
Yeah, and then they're stopped at a red light, and you can tell he's getting upset.
He puts his head
down. He doesn't really show, like, in his body any emotions, and he's waiting for the red light, and then he's still just waiting for the traffic lights, which I thought was kind of a unique way for him to kind of express, like, okay, your husband's coming home, there are boundaries now, like, I have to, like, really be respectful, and just the way he respects, like, the traffic signals and stuff, now he's got to do it here.
Another piece of symbolism here is this is another one of the times where we see his face lit only by red light. And that kind of shows, it speaks to his state of mind in the moment too. This feeling of red, the symbolism of being angry and frustrated, because he knows that there's nothing he can do about it. We see that symbolism a couple times, and rarely do we ever see a green light inside of the car. I don't think there is a time.
Just at that moment.
Yeah, just when it changes for him to go.
So then we cut to the welcome home party, and this is the song called Under Your Spell, and I believe the group is called Desire.
Desire.
Yeah.
And this song is beautiful.
Yeah.
Although all the music in this movie is beautiful.
So they have this party, and you can tell Irene is just not fully there, and Driver is at home in his apartment.
Standard Gabrielle, played by Oscar Isaac, gives this speech. He says, "Thank you all for being at this party, but it's a shameful situation. I should have never done what I did. It was bad. We're not celebrating that I'm home. We're celebrating that we're together again."
Does it ever say how long he was in prison?
It never does. We don't get a real idea of how long he was gone. We get an idea that he's been gone long enough where he's never really had a connection with Benicio, or like a buddy connection with Benicio. while this song is playing, which is really important, there's a lyric that comes up, and again, we use one of the reasons people didn't understand this film as much is because it's using the music and the camera cuts to tell the story. Where a lyric in the film is, and all I can do is think of you, and it's on the Irene character, and as it says, of you, it cuts to Driver.
Yeah.
It cuts straight to Driver. And they're both looking almost directly into camera.
Yeah.
I think this is the first time we see him wearing something other than a white t-shirt.
He's wearing a blue V-neck.
With a blue background.
Yeah. Blue, like the collar part is like open.
Mm-hmm.
It's the most open thing about this character.
Yeah, the most open thing about Driver is the floor plan of his apartment.
Yeah. This is the first time we see the inside of his apartment. There's hardly anything in it, and
there's nothing.
This is
There's
where
a bed and a table.
Yeah, we both thought of the classic film Les Samurai.
Les Samurai, with Jeff's house, where all he has is his bed and his bird.
Yeah.
And those are the only two things that really matter to him, which kind of speaks to Driver's state of mind, where the only things that matter, because the table that he has in his house has car parts on it.
Yeah.
So all that matters to him is his taking care of himself and being able to drive.
The apartment is just kind of like a nest for him. It's just where he comes back to. Like at the end of the day, he mostly just wants to be out driving.
Which he puts the scorpion jacket on.
Yeah.
He feels like driving. He goes out the door, and when he looks to his right, Irene is sitting on the floor outside of the party.
And then this is interesting too, because it keeps cutting back and forth, and they are both in the very corner of each shot.
None of the shots here are centered.
No.
I don't even think when Standard comes out, he's centered. Oh no, Standard is centered when he comes out.
Yeah.
But the dialogue here is also telling. It's not particularly super important, but it's telling to the state of mind of the character, because she apologizes for the noise. He makes a joke that he was going to call the cops, and with a way more sincere voice than you'd expect, she says, "I wish you would."
Yeah.
And they don't speak very often, but that definitely speaks to their relationship.
And then Standard comes out with Benicio, and he knows who Driver is because Benicio has been talking about him, but he doesn't seem threatened by him.
He looks like he's kind of showing out a little bit of chest puffed out.
Yeah.
He kind of comes at him a little. So you've been helping her out, huh?
Yeah.
You've been helping her out. But Driver's not worried about it whatsoever.
Yeah.
He doesn't. It doesn't affect him at all. He doesn't even say anything.
No, and then they go. I guess they're taking out the trash. He and Benicio, and he's like, "Let mommy talk to her friend." And then they don't even speak.
They smile at each other.
They have that direct eye contact. That's all they need. That's how they communicate. And they just smile, and then Driver leaves, and it is kind of condescending, because then Standard is like, "Have a good night." Like, just kind of cold.
Right. We cut to Driver in a diner by himself, and this is where we start to see this is where the transformation for Driver really starts.
He's upset. He's eating his comfort ice cream.
We saw him in the beginning of the film as this cold, calculating driver, and then we saw him start to change into a warmer person, wanting to be a hero in the scene. And this is our third transformation. Him starting to delve down deeper into
This is
the
like
bad guy
the
he thinks
turning point of the movie.
So he's sitting there, he's eating his ice cream for comfort. The body language here is really important, because there's not a lot of dialogue. But the way Ryan Gosling moves, and he doesn't take his eyes off his plate, he obviously, if you saw this person in a diner, you'd think, "I wonder what they're angry about."
Yep.
and he's approached by a man.
Mm-hmm.
Another of the criticisms of this film is this scene, because people go, what the hell was up with that?
They're like, who is that guy? But we just assume it's one of the two guys that he drove in the opening
The very first robbery scene that we see.
Yeah, because he was driving this guy and his brother, and the guy tells him how he was arrested for, I think, 6 months, so we're just assuming
and the brother
6
was
months
killed.
have gone by
Right.
since then, and the brother was killed, and how he has another job lined up, and
As soon as he says he has another job lined up, driver looks at him and says, walk away right now or I'm going to kick your teeth down your throat. And it's
something
not,
like, yeah, I'm gonna do it and make you swallow them, or like really angry but still restrained.
it's his eyes that really
Yeah.
catch you. We see that driver has grown stubble.
Mm-hmm.
His hair has grown out, and it's not exactly 100% in place like it was. It's not disheveled, but it's not as super in place as it was.
Mm-hmm.
And his eyes, this is also the first time we see driver not either square to the camera or facing away from it.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first time we see him angled towards camera, and it does give his face this darkened look because he's lit from only one side.
Yeah.
So we get this darkness on the sides of his eyes, and his eyes are crazy. In this, he has them wide open. He's looking this guy right in the face, and it's an intimidating that you haven't seen from the character yet.
Yeah. It's like this is something from the past that's coming back. He can't run from who he is, and this is where I think things really start to go downhill.
Yeah. So he comes back he goes back to his apartment building from this interaction with this guy, where he's reminded that. Where he starts to get this reminder that the past is always coming back.
Mm-hmm.
And there's two suspicious gentlemen walking out of the parking lot as he's driving in.
Yeah.
Two not so nice guys. They're both wearing tracksuits.
And one is like holding like a white cloth in his hand. Like you can tell he's got like blood or something.
If you know where we're going with this. These guys are part of an organization, if you know what I'm saying. He parks his car, and he discovers Standard, beaten pretty bad. Yeah, he can't stand. He's bleeding quite convincingly.
And Benicio has seen the whole thing go down.
Witnessed the entire thing.
He's frightened. He won't go near Standard, but Driver comes, and he immediately
jumps right into
goes
Driver's
to
arms.
Driver.
The conversation after this is in the bathroom of Irene's apartment. We learn about...
Yeah, well, first we cut to they're in the apartment, and this is where there's like a sudden, it seems like a disconnect with Benicio. He and Driver are sitting not together, they're on separate pieces of furniture, and Benicio isn't talking, he's just looking straight ahead, he's closed off.
Yep, I forgot.
So he goes in the bathroom to talk to Standard.
We learn about Standard's backstory.
Mm-hmm.
While he was inside, he had to pay protection money, and when he got out, that money, they kept changing the amount that was.
They keep increasing
right,
it.
He says 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, and he said, I don't know how much it's going to be tomorrow.
Yep.
He said, if I don't pay up, they threaten to come after Irene and Benicio next. Which, when he gives that line, while he's talking about his own story, Driver is leaning against the door. When he says that part, Driver stands up. He's not leaning on the door anymore. Now this is where his investment in this problem comes from. If it comes to the safety of Benicio and Irene, now he has to be a part. There's no question anymore.
Mm-hmm.
When he leaves the bathroom, we definitely get why he has to enter this issue, because Benicio hands him a bullet.
Yep. He was given this bullet and told by one of the men not to lose it.
Don't lose this, I might need it later.
Yeah.
To which Driver says, can I keep this? And
Benicio's just like, okay.
Yeah, he doesn't exactly fight him on it.
Yeah.
After, okay, those protection money, we see him steal a car after he leaves. Is that where we're at? Yep.
Or is that before or after he goes to the diner where Irene works and goes to talk to her?
I don't think that happens yet.
I don't remember. Because I have a note here that this movie always makes me crave coffee right after that part because he's like
that part.
always drinking coffee and it makes me want coffee.
No, go ahead because I think I missed that part in my notes.
So he goes to the diner and then suddenly there's this shift. He's the one being inquisitive of her and she's being really short and he's like, it looks like Standard was in an accident and I don't remember her, but she's really short.
He asks her what happened and she says he was in an accident, it was just some dumb drunk kids.
Yeah.
Which now he knows that she's lying to him.
Or we don't
think she looked, in my interpretation, if you watch the film and you feel different, tell me in the comments section. In my interpretation, it looks like she's lying.
But then at the same time, we don't actually know what she really knows. She's just such an innocent character. But he's the one that is driving the conversation with her now. He's driving the conversation.
I see what you did there.
But yeah, she's more closed off at this point. And
this is where we see him still in the car after that conversation.
Okay.
He takes this car and he goes to meet with Standard. And one of the guys we saw in the part leading the party.
But isn't there's a family scene before then, right? Where they're they're at the diner and she's being super short, but then she was like, oh, why don't you come see Benicio? Because you can tell he hasn't been spending as much time with them. So he goes over there and they're having a family dinner, and this is where we learn about how Standard met Irene. He met her. He thinks that she was 19. She was actually only 17. He's like, oh man, that was illegal.
Which if you do the math, only makes the Irene character 23 or 22 or 23.
Yeah. So how he met her, he was the one that approached her, and he was like, oh hi, how are you doing? My name is Standard. And she was like, well, where's the deluxe version?
And he laughs about it.
Yeah.
And she kind of laughs about it. And Driver is not happy because there is a history here that he is not a part of.
But he's kind of smirking because he thinks it was clever.
He still thinks it's funny.
Yeah.
But
there's that sadness, like...
For the rest
there's like a friendship kind of developing between him and Standard. And there's just that boundary that...
He doesn't want to cross.
Yeah.
And he doesn't, it's not that he can't, he doesn't want to. He wants to be the good guy.
Oh, so bad.
And he doesn't want to do things the wrong way. He could have made advances on Irene while Standard was gone. He didn't want to.
Yep.
And you're right, I missed like 2 whole scenes in my notes, and I have no idea how I pulled that up.
So then this is where we go, and this is where we meet Cook.
Or Chris.
Yeah, Cook.
Whatever you want to call him.
He was one of the guys that beat Standard up.
Yes.
And,
which, this character, we talk about characters changing over time in this movie. This one is actually like one of the few points of humor in the movie. Because he hurt his hand while beating up Standard. He gets hurt again in a future scene. And then he gets hurt again in a future scene. And then he gets killed. So there's these almost comical things happening to this guy, but they're not. It's funny, but it's not. It's darkly funny.
This guy just seems so goofy. How does anyone take him seriously? How is he running like these scams and stuff?
He is the cartoon version of a mobster, but you still believe that it's somebody you would see in real life.
Yeah.
He's
just a piece of trash.
He's just, he's a jerk, and you can tell that he feels like because he's connected, he can treat anybody however he wants. And this is also where we get introduced to Blanche.
Miss Christina Hendricks.
Christina Hendricks, that I only knew from Firefly.
I was a big Mad Men fan. I loved Joan. So seeing her, because she wasn't dressed very well in this. She looked kind of like slummish, and
she's made to look like someone who would a woman who would hang out with mobsters.
Yeah.
I know her from Firefly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sad.
No, I just knew she was on Mad Men, and then in real life she is married to the guy from Super Troopers that is arrested at the beginning of the movie, and he eats all the weed.
Really?
And he's talking about
out, man.
Yeah, the snot. Oh, what is he?
The Snosberries taste.
Yes,
like
the
Snosberries.
Snosberries guy.
The Snosberries
Yeah,
taste like
she's
Snosberries.
married to him.
Okay, so he tells the mobster. He tells this guy Chris Cook. At this point, we know his name is Cook.
Yeah.
He tells the mobster when the job is done, which we don't fully know what the job is yet. Mm-hmm. It kind of, we see it unfold. When the job is done, you leave Standard alone. That's it.
So he's telling Cook the conditions, like, I do this is how I work, I drive, because he's not intimidated by anyone. He has his own system, so he's kind of taking charge of this situation.
This is where we find out how much of a fucking cartoon this Cook guy is. Because you see him with a pen writing on his hand, and he says, this is how much Blanche gets, this is how much that piece of shit gets, and he's talking about Standard. And then he says, and this is how much you get, and he turns his hand around, and he just wrote fuck off on his hand.
Yeah.
And if you feel like if you are a driver, you want to laugh at this guy. Mm-hmm. He's kind of a tool. But it's still a believable character because that guy could really exist. Mm-hmm. I feel like I've met that guy before. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say any names, but if you're listening, you know who you are.
Plenty in this area.
So he gives him the speech from the beginning of the movie. You get 5 minutes on either side.
Yeah.
All I do is drive. I don't sit in. I don't carry a gun. And
so then we cut to another family scene.
Oh, this is the dinner where he tells the story about them meeting. And
oh, is it this one?
It's this one, and then he also, this is the one where he refers to him as his friend. This is where Standard...
Yeah, they toast a friendship.
They toast a friendship.
Yeah.
And Standard refers to Driver as his friend.
Yeah.
And it's sincere. Mm-hmm. He reaches out and he touches Driver's hand.
Yeah.
So he really does feel like there's a relationship blooming between Standard and Driver also, which, if you think about it, it's because Driver wants to be a good person, so he's doing these things that he feels like only a good person would do, and he really is being a good person. He's not faking it anymore.
And also because he knows he can do it well.
Yes. We go from this dinner where he refers to him as his friend to the job, this pawn shop. We see the words pawn and loan money. If you're loaning money in a pawn, if you see a sign on a pawn shop that says they loan money, don't take money from that pawn shop. don't owe that pawn shop money. You don't know where the money came from. Their job, we find out, is to rob this place.
And also to note, this is probably the first sequence in the movie that doesn't have any music at all.
There's no music.
It's quiet, it's tense, you feel like something is not right.
You are waiting with Driver in the car.
Yes.
Because it's shot in that same camera where our camera is on the side of Driver's face. So you feel the tension he's feeling. Blanche comes out of the pawn shop. She's carrying a big bag.
Well, yeah, first, Blanche is standing outside of the pawn shop smoking, and Driver and Standard are in the car, and Driver is tapping on his watch that he always keeps around the steering wheel, and he's like, I'll see you in 5 minutes. And then Standard starts getting out of the car and he's like, I'll see you in 4.
Which he doesn't want to be any part of this. He's just trying to get over it.
Yeah.
Blanche comes out with the bag of money. Standard comes out of the door and turns and gets shot in the neck.
Oh, yeah. And also, while they were in the pawn shop, we see this other car pull up into the parking lot.
Driver is obviously suspicious because
and it's a really nice car, too.
It's a Chrysler E300.
Yeah, and the windows are like tinted.
E300 series. And the way Gosling played this, he sees the other car pull up, he is suspicious of it, and he's not side-eyeing it. He full turns his head and his body and squares up, looks at this other car. So if it is a car to be suspicious of, they know he knows.
Mm-hmm.
Which is the right way to play it if you are a driver, and it's the right way to act it if you are Gosling. Blanche comes out with the bag. Standard comes out right behind her and gets shot in the neck.
And then the guy working the store comes out, shoots him
multiple times.
Yeah, and then driver gets out of the car because he
wants to help.
That's his friend, his new friend, and so he immediately gets back in the car and drives off, and this other car starts chasing them, and then this is a really cool chase scene.
We get a chase scene here that, in the technical aspect, the logistical aspect of making a chase scene, you don't see chase scenes made in camera very often anymore, and you don't see actors in camera during chase scenes anymore.
And then also, there's still no music during this scene.
The sounds you hear are the engine sounds.
Yep.
And they are audioed very high. And this is actually this is the first time you see Driver driving frustrated. You see expressions.
His hair is starting to hang over his forehead.
You see him making facial expressions.
Yep.
Like he's upset that he's not driving well enough. It's not even upset. At this point, it's not even upset that Standard was murdered. He's upset that he's not driving well enough. This other car, for a couple moments, is getting the better of him, and that frustrates him.
And this whole thing did not go as planned, so he's not so in control anymore. But this is where we really see Driver's instincts at work as well.
Yes. Where was I? Notes?
So there are more exterior shots of the cars.
In this one.
I kind of saw it as like the outside world is finally becoming a threat.
Yes, the outside world is finding its way into Driver's world that he made for himself.
And then we see that awesome shot of Christina Hendricks in the back seat, and it's all slow motion. And
the following car, the chasing car, flips, and it, like I said, it's in camera. This is real shot of Christina. It's not green screen. We see Christina Hendricks, and we see the chase car flip behind Driver's car. I don't think in another film you're going to see anybody else try that stunt because it's a little dangerous for actors and actresses, but it is beautifully shot.
There's just so many iconic images in this movie. I think when it came out, I really did see it as a modern classic.
I
modern
still do.
Masterpiece.
Yes. Oh man, we gotta do something about this dog. It's bad. I'm sorry, everybody. Our dog is an old man, and it is bad in here. So they get to a motel, which is supposed to be their hideout after the robbery. They're gonna lay low. We see Irene being questioned by the police.
She's not really in tears or anything. She just seems
more
like
shock.
in shock.
It looks like shock.
Yeah. And then we see the close-up shot of the scorpion on his jacket because I think he's trying to call Irene.
And Benicio answers.
Yeah.
And he says, "Can I talk to your mom?" He says she's talking to the police. He says, have her call me when she can.
Mm-hmm.
And as the camera, we don't see Ryan Gosling as much in this scene. The camera is panning up slowly over the Scorpion, which kind of conveys that that's all there is right now, is the Scorpion part of Driver. It very clearly on display. We go back in and he... Is this where he starts putting on his gloves?
Yeah, because they're in this hotel room and Blanche is watching the news, and then they find out that the convenience store guy or the pawn shop guy or whatever lied to the police and said that no money was stolen. So Driver is immediately like, "Well, this isn't right."
But if somebody were to say, and this is a part of Nicolas Refn not treating the audience like they're stupid. If $1 million is taken, which we see a shot of the bag, you're not told how much is in it, but you are led to assume it is a large amount. She says that you were only supposed to get 40 grand. It's much more than 40 grand.
Isn't it like $1 million?
It is. It is $1 million in the bag. We find out later, and
well, they were supposed to... Well, Blanche was told by Cook that the other car had pulled up because they were supposed to get ripped off.
They were supposed to get robbed after the robbery. But Refn knew that if you see the money and then you hear that the owner says that there was none taken, you are only led to assume that it is dirty money.
Yeah.
It is money that cannot be said that it was taken. So this is something where we should thank the director, because he's not treating the audience like they're dumb. With that, and we get that in a lot of other movies.
And then this is also where we first see Driver angry. He smacks Blanche.
He starts putting his gloves on.
Yeah.
He actually gives her a chance first. He says, "Tell me what's really going on here." And we see him slowly putting his gloves on. And there is driving gloves that have tactical knuckle knocks on the back. And I actually just recently showed Tara here that Facebook sends you ads. Oh, we think you'll like this ad. And one of them was a pair of driving gloves with tactical knuckle knocks on the back. And they're almost just like his, only his are brown. And the ones I saw were green. But he's putting these gloves on, and he gives her a chance to tell the truth. He knows she lies to him. He backhand smacks her, which you don't expect. Up until that point, you're like, oh, okay, he's the good guy of the movie. Kinda. He smacks the shit out of Christina Hendricks' character. And then he pins her down and he says, all right, somebody's dead and we're sitting here with way too much money. It's time you start telling me the truth.
He's like, a little boy's father is dead.
Yes, that's what's really important to him. Is that not so much that his friend is dead, but that Benicio lost his father.
Yeah.
He gets the information out of her. She tells him everything. It's actually $1 million. They were supposed to be ripped off. The name of the guy who we've known up as Cook up till now, his name is actually Chris.
Yeah.
And she doesn't know where to find him. She doesn't know anything about him other than that.
Well, he's like, you're going to take me to him. And this is when she goes into the bathroom.
She's been crying, so she goes into the bathroom to fix herself. Her phone goes off. And he is sitting on it. He picks it up. He looks at it. We never are told what the phone says.
The camera just zooms in on him, and he's got this... He's, like, really concerned.
I wouldn't say concerned. I would say my thought of what he's thinking is, oh, shit.
Yeah.
Because he knows at that point what's about to happen.
And he sees the shadow of someone.
He sees the doorknob turning, and the door's locked.
He hears it. He sees the shadow of the guy walking past the window.
Yep. And then there's a gentleman that comes to the window outside of the bathroom, and we see one of the goriest gunshots that you'll see in a movie where Blanche gets shot with a shotgun in the side of the head, and her entire head just explodes.
Slow motion.
In slow motion explodes.
Yeah.
Half her head is gone. They had to have done that practically. It doesn't look like a doll. It still looks like Christina Hendricks.
Mm-hmm. Because you see the reflection in the mirror, too.
Yes, so you see the front of her face. It is amazingly shot.
Yeah.
Does Driver go after the guy with the shotgun first?
He flips up the mattress.
Oh, he gets shot.
The guy in the bathroom is still shooting through the window, so...
Driver gets shot in the shoulder when he's flipping up the mattress.
Yeah.
With the shotgun.
Mm-hmm.
And he flips the mattress up against the door, so the bullets from the main door can't come through.
Yeah.
The guy from the bathroom starts actually coming through, and Driver fights him. Now, the difference between I, as myself, an aspiring film writer and someone who aspires to also choreograph fight scenes, watch this movie and realize that the fight scenes in this movie are choreographed in a way that a fight would really happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's not flashy. One punch hits the guy and he is very stunned. He takes the shotgun. He hits the guy with the shotgun. He stabs him in the chest with the shower curtain pole, I believe.
Was it that, or was it the broken glass from the window?
Well, he stabs him in the chest with some kind of pole because
Okay.
it goes all the way through him.
Yeah.
And then he beats another guy to death with something else.
I thought he grabs the guy's shotgun and then shoots the guy that's coming through the front door.
Yes.
And so this is where you pretty much know that Driver is probably not a stranger to having killed people.
No, not whatsoever. He definitely knows what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
I counted, and there's in the entire fight scene between Driver and these guys, there are only 16 camera cuts.
Yeah.
In the entire scene, which is amazing that there are these fast motion movement scenes and there's only 16 cuts. Most films you see would use a cut for every time somebody throws a punch, or they have to show a character's face.
Or if you're watching a Peter Berg movie and you get 69 shots in a dialogue-driven 3-minute time period.
69 shots in 3 minutes. Yeah, and all they're doing is talking.
Yeah.
If you have epilepsy, don't watch Peter Berg films.
Yeah.
You will get sick. So, wait, where was I in my notes?
So,
Driver's face at the end.
Yeah.
He's not mad.
He's covered in blood.
His face conveys understanding that this is how it's going to be.
And it's about to get worse.
Yeah, he knows, his face shows that he knows now what he has to be ready for.
Yep.
He is absolutely covered in blood. It's everywhere. And his face is completely covered in blood.
It's a pretty cool shot, actually.
It's a very effective shot. And he slowly backs back into the bathroom.
Yeah, that was a cool shot, too. I liked how they did that. He kind of just disappears off screen.
We cut from there back to Shannon's garage.
Yeah, which they have a doctor.
A mob doctor.
I don't understand why this was cut, but the doctor is actually played by Russ Tamblyn. Do you know?
I didn't know that.
It's him. I don't know why he...
Explain to the audience who Russ Tamblyn is, because we're nerds.
Russ Tamblyn was in the original The Haunting movie. He was in West Side Story. He's also been in Twin Peaks. His daughter is Amber Tamblyn, who was in the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants movies.
That's where you're going to go with that?
In Joan of Arcadia.
She's been in a ton of
She's married to David Cross. But yeah, her dad was the doctor who's pulling
I didn't know that was Russ Tamblyn. Because you only see his face for a second.
Yeah, I don't know why. Because if you go to IMDb, he's listed on like the main cast.
That might be a thing where like one of the guys, whether it be Ryan or Nicholas, were like, "Hey, Russ," like he just happened to be around. And you want to play this mob doctor?
There's so many like cool names in this movie.
The entire cast is awesome.
Yeah.
And this mob doctor is taking out the shotgun shot from Driver's arm, and Shannon is talking, which usually Bryan Cranston doesn't play annoying characters, but this character is an annoying person. It's not an annoying character. The character is an annoying person.
Yeah.
He goes from there. This is where we get the shot that I think is the scene that is the most iconic of the film. I actually kind of get choked up because this is where we get Driver. His hair's perfect again, but he's still got the stubble on his face, and he's wearing the jacket, and his collar is perfect. His sleeves are rolled up, and he walks into the strip club. And as he's coming down these stairs, he says to the stripper, "Which way do I find Chris?" And she goes, "In the dressing room." Duh. Like he was supposed to fucking know that.
Yeah.
He goes into this dressing room. There is no talking. This is why I feel like the fight choreography in this movie is realer than most. He doesn't say, "Hey, Chris, we gotta talk." There's no serious action stuff. He just breaks the guy's arm.
Yeah.
He pulls out the hammer, which this is why I say it's iconic. When you think about Driver as a character in the action scenes that are in this film, you think about him with the scorpion jacket on, and his sleeves rolled up, and the hammer in his hand.
Because that shot was always in the preview too. That shot of him and the hammer.
It's the poster of the movie.
Yeah.
It's the poster of the movie, and I want myself taken in that same picture. But he breaks Chris's arm, and then he hits the ground, and he tries to get Chris to talk, and he's still trying to be a tough guy. So he takes the bullet out that he gave Benicio, and he asks him if he recognizes it. And that's when we figure out that Chris is kind of a bitch. Because he starts begging for another, and whose money was it? He's trying to get the information out. And this is where we, as an audience, get a revelation where you as an audience, if you're paying attention, you go, "Oh no," because Chris says, "Somebody call Nino."
Yep.
And we find out that it's Nino's money.
Well, not really his. He robbed
He was robbing
from
the pawn
East
shop.
Coast.
Right.
Yeah.
So now it's Nina's money.
Yeah.
In order to get this information, though, he does a thing that it would be scary if you're a normal person, where he puts the bullet on Chris's forehead and picks the hammer up like he's going to hammer the bullet into Chris's head. That's scary.
Yeah.
Does he put it in his mouth after that?
Yeah, does he make him swallow it?
He makes him swallow it. He pries his mouth open with the hammer,
yeah.
and then he makes him swallow the bullet.
And then he gets on the phone, like someone calls Nino.
Somebody does. One of the strippers called Nino.
Well, one of Nino's guys answers the phone and was like, who are you?
Yeah,
what do you want?
He says, I want to talk to Nino. The guy tells him to fuck off.
And he's
he
like,
says,
I've got something of his.
Nino gets on the phone and assumes that Driver's trying to sell his money back to him. He says, I don't want to sell it. I just want you to have it. Now, in this scene is the first time we see Driver physically shaken. Once he realizes that it's Nino, he is shaking. He's shaking. He's nervous shaking. This is the first time we see him emotional. He's sweating. He's shaking. He can't really talk. He's kind of wavering in his voice.
Yeah.
And he says, I'm not trying to sell it to you. I just want you to have it back. I want this to be over with. Nino says, we both know that can't happen. He says, I'm going to drop it off somewhere, or we'll have a time and place, and then I'll drop it off there, and we're done. Nino says, you know that can't happen, and that's actually the end of the conversation. So Driver realizes that there is no good way out.
So this is when he goes to confront Irene at home, and he is completely disheveled. His coat is all bloody. His hair is all messed up. And then they go out together, and this is the elevator scene.
No, that's not until later, I don't think. Oh, yeah, it is.
It is.
So he admits he was there when Standard died, Tyler.
Yeah.
She slaps him in the face.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of being frustrated or rejected by that, he is understanding, and he just keeps saying exactly what he was saying before she slaps him. Because that's all he can do to make it right. The stubble is prominent. His hair is messed up, like you said. He doesn't look like the same guy. They get onto the elevator, and character credited as Tan Suit is on the elevator. We know this is a hitman sent by Nino because it's a line of dialogue after the phone call. I always feel like this guy looks like Joseph Gordon-Levitt in Looper.
Yeah.
He looks exactly like Joseph Gordon-Levitt playing Bruce Willis for some reason.
And they found out who Driver was because Driver went to Shannon, and Shannon was like, well, let me talk to Bernie, and it just...
I'll get this worked out. It's not... I'll get this worked out.
Yeah, because Shannon is trusting in Bernie, and it's just a bad idea.
He notices immediately the gun in Tan Suit's jacket. It's the first thing he sees. He kind of moves her behind him, and this is the only time they make physical contact other than holding hands. They're standing, and there is a... Again, this is something... Comment if you think one way or the other. There's a kiss here. But before the kiss, they are standing a certain distance away from each other. And after the kiss, during the kiss, the lights dim. There's no light on. There's a light between them, but there's no light on them. And then after the kiss, the lights turn back on, and they are exactly the same distance away. So there's a lot of ways to interpret that. Some people have interpreted as the kiss is in Driver's head. It doesn't really happen. Some people interpret it as when there is a kiss, the rest of the world is gone.
That's how I saw it, and I think this is where we disagree.
Yeah,
You
I
think
honestly
it didn't
don't
happen.
think it.
I think it did.
And
because he knew what he was about to do, and he probably realized this was his one chance with her. So
as soon as they're done kissing, he goes after Tan Suit. This is not a conventional fight scene. He prevents him from pulling his gun, and he hits him. And usually in a fight scene, there will be some flourish here. He just stomps his head.
And this movie has some really brutal scenes.
When I say he stomps his head, I don't know the Foley noise they used for this, but if you're squeamish, it may get to you. The makeup here may get to you because we see Driver's heel going through Tan Suit's head.
Yeah.
Crushing his skull. He wears old style leather hard sole shoes, and we see him just crushing this guy's head.
And Irene is just standing there watching it. She really has no reaction, just kind of like in shock, but...
When she backs up off the elevator, she looks absolutely terrified.
Yeah.
When she backs up off the elevator, she looks like she's scared of him, and he knows it.
Yeah.
And this is the moment I feel like Driver knows it's over. That this is who he really is. That little piece of happiness he had is completely gone. It's never coming back, and all he can do is work towards Irene and Benicio's safety. The Scorpion, actually, and this is in my notes. I forgot until I looked at my notes here. While he's stomping Tan Suit's head, the way it's shot is Ryan Gosling's head is down, looking down, and his shoulders are hunched, so we can't see a person, but all she can see of him is the scorpion. So all she can see is the scorpion, and from now on, that's all she's going to see of him.
Yeah.
And it's actually really sad.
It leads into another scene that's really sad. This is when he confronts Shannon.
And he is betrayed by his best friend.
Yeah.
This is where we see the dialogue.
Shannon meant to do well, but...
He's kind of an idiot.
Yeah. It's pretty heartbreaking because you pretty much know at this point there's not going to be a happy ending, really, for anyone.
There's no way for there to be a happy ending. He's angry, but it sounds like he's crying, and he's asking him why he would do that. Shannon told Bernie that Driver did it for Irene and Benicio, which brings them into the situation, and that's what he's most mad about. Yeah. Why would you tell him about that?
And then this is where he's like, why you always do things to mess things up, which goes back
such a loser.
To that whole bad luck thing that Bernie had said about him earlier. He really is a guy that means well, he just doesn't trust in the right people.
He doesn't trust in the right people, and he has no street acumen. He's not street smart at all.
Yeah.
So he always says and does the wrong thing around the wrong people. After that, which is a hard thing to watch, we get a rare scene of just Nino and Bernie.
Yeah.
And they are arguing over sending Tansuit to kill Driver. Bernie says, oh yeah, you thought it was a really good idea, but now it's blown up in your face.
Because this is where we find out that Nino was robbing the East Coast mob, which Bernie refers to as the family.
So we're led to assume that they are part of this mob, but they are an offshoot in California, and they were robbing someone who was also from the same mob, but setting up an operation in their area.
And these are people that Nino was like, what family? Because they are always making comments to him about being Jewish, which...
He uses a particular Jewish slur, I'm not going to say.
So, it's...
They squeeze his cheeks and call... he says he's 59 years old?
I think so.
He says, I'm 59 years old and they still squeeze my cheek and call me a kid.
So he is so mean to everyone, but he can't handle it when other people are mean to him. So he's been robbing from them.
Bernie is particularly angry that he was trying to steal. And then he's also... This is where we learn that Bernie Rose is not about the violence. If he can make the money without the violence, he'd rather do that. That doesn't mean that he can't be a violent person, but that means that he would rather do what he has to do without the violence and make the money than it just be there.
So I thought this shot was interesting because Bernie's face is lit up, but the rest of his body is dark. Because the whole time we're like, oh, maybe Bernie is not, such a bad guy.
He's not that bad.
Yeah.
This is also, we have Chris, the gentleman that got his hand broken, and he's now in a pin cast, and he's eating pizza, and he's listening.
Being a total slob.
He's listening to this conversation, and at a certain point, he says, just let me take care of it, I can take care of it. To which Bernie turns around and tells him promptly to shut the fuck up. Something about, you stupid monkey.
Yeah.
And it's funny until you realize why we're having that conversation. Because Bernie and Nino now have to make a deal.
Yeah.
Nino's problem is Chris, and Nino's problem is Driver and Irene, and Bernie's problem now is Chris. Because Chris knows way too much.
Yeah.
So Bernie stabs Chris in the eye with a fork, and then walks behind the counter, grabs one of the big kitchen knives, and this is the part that Tara can't watch because she doesn't like neck injury scenes in movies, and Bernie very realistically slides this knife in and out of Chris's neck. Like, it's not like a movie where he goes really fast. He pushes this thing in and then pulls it back out, and it looks gross.
And he's so angry. He's not, like, angry about killing this guy. He's more angry, oh, I'm having to clean up your mess again. Now you can clean up mine for once. And just the fact that he's having to resort to this violence, because then Nino is like, well, not only does Driver have to go, but your friend Shannon does too.
Yep. Bernie, we go straight to Bernie broke into Shannon's garage, right?
Mm-hmm.
He talks to him.
Well, first, we cut to that quick scene where Driver is walking around in broad daylight, and his coat is all bloody, but he's on a movie set.
Right.
So no one's really gonna bat an eye.
Nobody's gonna say anything about a guy whose coat is covered in blood.
So he's going. It's the movie set that he was on earlier, where he was doing the stunt as a cop, and he goes into the trailer and he takes the mask that he had worn while doing the stunt.
He takes the mask, and we go from there to nighttime.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is another scene that people were like, how could all these mobsters not notice this guy standing outside the restaurant with this ridiculous mask?
We're skipping a few.
What did we skip? Did we skip Bernie and Shannon?
Yeah.
Okay. The conversation between Bernie and Shannon is actually one of partial respect.
Mm-hmm.
He says that he was really excited about the whole car thing.
Yeah.
He thought this was actually going to work out for Shannon.
Mm-hmm.
He finally shakes his hand, and then he turns his arm over and cuts his wrist. He tells him it's over, there's no more pain. He sits him down, and that's it for Shannon. He basically leaves him there to bleed to death.
Yeah.
He pulls out a ivory-handled titanium straight razor to cut his wrist with.
Yeah, and he's like, the pain is gone, it's done, it won't be long.
Yeah.
It's really sad.
You almost feel like Bernie doesn't want to have to kill Shannon.
Yeah.
Not that he shows that at all. It's just the way he says that there's no more pain. It's done.
Yeah, they've had this history together. Bernie used to make these like porno films, and
he says a critic called them European.
Yeah, and Shannon used to work on them with him. So they've had this history together, and then Bernie goes back to his apartment and he's cleaning off the blade, and you see he's got this like really fancy box of these like knives, and then he pours himself a drink and he's just sitting there and he's just like reflecting.
He does not look happy.
No.
It is a look of it's almost the same look that you get from Driver in the elevator, where he realizes that there's no good way that any of this is going to go down. Yeah. He doesn't look happy. Albert Brooks really sells the slouch of this character, the slump this character is in at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Now, okay, I screwed up. Now we get the mask. This is where we get the mask. And the misconception people have in this part is, why do all these mobsters having this party not see this guy in this obvious latex mask through the door? But if you watch when Driver walks around to the back of his car, he opens the trunk, and in the background you see that the billboards all say that it is Halloween. So one of the things people miss, this is again Refn not treating his audience like they're stupid. That's crazy. Her mic is just slowly sliding towards her. Yeah, her mic is freaking me out right now.
So in this scene too, the music is a little bit different. I'm not sure how old the song is, but it sounds older. I don't know the exact title. It might be "Oh My Love." But it sounds like an old-fashioned song that's
It sounds
playing.
like a pre-pop song.
Yeah, and the woman is singing like how from nature we could learn to start again, which says so much about the movie and how some of these characters have tried,
And it also is a bit of a foreshadowing for what comes up almost immediately after this.
And actually, during Standard's welcome home party, he did make that speech, and he was like, second chances are so rare to come across.
Yes.
So everything just kind of ties together.
We see Driver kind of step away from the door,
Mm-hmm.
and then we see Nino and his driver in his car, and they're driving. The camera cuts kind of lead us to believe. They don't show Driver particularly, I don't believe, but they kind of lead us to believe Driver's following him.
Mm-hmm.
And then he clips his back end, kind of hits him with a quarter panel move, and he spins out and he stops. And he's like, "What the hell was that?"
Mm-hmm.
There is another long, tense scene here where you see the side of Nino, and he's looking out. The camera's looking out the window past Nino into darkness. And then the lights on Driver's car turn on, and he T-bones Nino's car right off a cliff.
Mm-hmm.
It's never really explained how Driver gets down there. I think he just kind of jumps down.
It's kind of overall just an eerie scene.
Nino's car lands. The driver Nino's driver died in the crash, and Nino gets out of the car, and we're now on a beach. The ocean is right near the car. Driver is walking past the crashed car towards Nino, and we see Nino, instead of coming at Driver to try to fight him, or instead of running either way on the beach, he goes out into the water.
He seems very frightened here.
Scared. Terrified.
Yeah.
And he is running it's like he's running away.
Yeah.
But he's running into the
water, and then Driver follows him.
But he doesn't for a second.
Yeah.
He stands and watches.
Mm-hmm.
He stands and watches Nino almost in this stance. But because he has the mask on, you can't really make 100% on what this stance is he's watching him in. Whether he feels empowered or whether he's angry. But there is a strong emotion coming out of Driver watching Nino run into the ocean. Nino almost looks like he's trying to wash himself.
Yeah.
He's flailing his arms and he's not making it very far into the water. And there's some symbolism here. Because there's some religious symbolism. Nino is Jewish. The water, the ocean has had like soul cleaning properties in older Jewish thought. And then there is also the idea that this is the maximum version of Driver. He feels most like the hero or superhero that he could be, and Nino can feel it, and that's what he's running from. But Driver follows him into the water and drowns him to death. Now, we don't see that as much. The camera's panning out when that happens. But you do get this beautiful shot of the black night and Driver and Nino in the water, and there are pretty waves around them, but there's this violent thing happening in the waves. Okay, I'm looking for my notes too. Sorry, everybody. I wasn't paying attention to my notes. He calls Nino or calls Bernie right after this, and during this call, it's confirmed that there's only a few people left in this. Two of them are Irene and Benicio. It's Bernie's goal to make sure that there's no people left in this except for Bernie, and it's Driver's goal to make sure that Bernie and Benicio are left no matter what.
You mean Irene and Benicio?
Irene and Benicio. Because duh.
Yeah, so Bernie is pretty much telling him that he has to die, otherwise he's gonna be looking behind his shoulder for the rest of his life.
This meeting in this Chinese restaurant.
Yeah.
Yes, they meet after the call in a Chinese restaurant, and he tells him, no matter what, you're either going to die, or from now on, you don't have any plans for the future, don't try to settle anywhere, you're never going to be happy, you're always going to be running. And Driver, again, we're back to the Driver that shows no intimidation from anyone. He looks at Benicio, I'm just messing names up left and right here. He looks at Bernie the same way he's looked at him the entire movie. Nothing has changed between the two men. He asks him where the money is, and then we start cutting back and forth between the parking lot of the Chinese restaurant and the conversation between the two of them. And this is again where some symbolism split happens, some debate. Now, is Driver thinking these things going on in the parking lot through before they happen? Because we can see the conversation and the parking lot at the same time? Or are these things that have happened separately, like the conversation and then the parking lot, we're just seeing them at the same time? You make your own interpretation. Go ahead and tell us. And then there's the fight between Bernie and Driver. This is the ultimate, the end, the climax. This is it. This is the end of everything. Bernie stabs Driver what looks like right in the stomach.
As he's turning around, he's getting the money out of the trunk, and as he turns around, Bernie just stabs him.
Yes. Driver also has a knife, if I'm correct. And he stabs Bernie in the neck.
Yeah.
None of this is in camera. This is all shown in silhouette, shadow on the pavement. We see Irene. It cuts to Irene knocking on his door, and she's crying. And then nobody answers, so she walks away. And then we cut back to Driver sitting in his car. Now, in his car, Driver's sitting and he is motionless. The first time you watch it, you're like, oh, well, he died anyway.
But he's been motionless in so many shots in the movie, too. Yes. But then the sunlight is coming and he's suddenly engulfed in this light. So I had, when I saw it, I thought, oh, that's it, he died.
Yeah. So you can also have the interpretation that it wasn't that bad of a knife wound, he's just bleeding. And then you can also have the interpretation that he died. But my argument against that is all the things that happen after. We see him driving. We see him driving at night. Not during the day of the day he was stabbed, but at night afterward. So we see him driving away from those problems. He's getting away from Irene and Benicio, and a real hero's playing again.
Yeah.
And this is the end transformation of Driver. We are now into, he has done his first 3 transformations, and now he is the hero he thought he was. They are safe. They show Bernie's body, and he actually left the money. So he is the hero now, but he realizes that being the hero comes with not getting the thing that you are a hero over. You are not going to be happy if you are the hero. And in his face, you can, during these shots of him driving at night, you see that he's okay with that. And that's when we go back to the credits in this font, that if you know the name of this font, comment, tell us how to get it.
Well, see, like, I thought, like, he does die, because it just seemed like Bernie knew how to mortally wound people. Like, the way he did with Shannon, he knew what he was doing, and I don't know if he would just stab Driver, like, carelessly, you know? Like, unless it was a way to mortally wound him.
See, I don't think that with the knife he had, in the way he was turned, there's always a chance that you'd be alright. He's not a small guy. And he's actually turning. So, but hey, like I said, in the comments, tell us what you think about it. I think Driver's alive, because he is driving away at night. And there are multiple times in the movie.
Maybe he really is driving, but then he goes and dies somewhere. It could be taken that way too.
Yes.
That's why I'm curious what the book is like and what happens there.
Right. After the film ended, there's a couple things that you are left with questions about. One is the reference to the scorpion and the story of the scorpion and the frog, because they never actually tell the story in the movie.
But if you've seen the movie The Crying Game, you know
if
what
you've seen
the
the movie
story
The Crying Game, that's a stay tuned.
And that was a movie from 1992, but very controversial.
Crying Game is a stay tuned on the show, maybe?
One of the greatest movies ever.
Okay. But the story of the scorpion and the frog, in case you haven't seen The Crying Game,
Shush.
is a scorpion comes to the bank of a pond, and he needs to get across. He walks up to the frog and says, "If you let me ride on your back across the pond, I won't sting you." The frog says, "But you will sting me and we'll both die." The scorpion says, "No, I won't." So they get to the middle of the pond, and the scorpion stings the frog, and as they're both dying, the frog says, "Why?" and the scorpion replies that it's in his nature.
Yep.
So the scorpion on his jacket the entire time is showing that these things he's doing are just in his nature. There is no... It's the idea of battling your nature, not wanting your nature to be what it is, but not being able to fight it, and possibly having that be what makes you the person you want to be.
So he was running from something in the past. He came to LA. He's been living this very isolated life, but it just goes to show, like, you can't ever run from who you really are.
No. And then afterwards we also watched the trailer, because a lot of the problem with the film was the trailer. It's very misleading. It's incorrect. I don't know who put that together, but they definitely didn't have anything to do with the production of the film.
I mean, it was a well put together trailer, but it definitely makes it seem like
a different movie.
Like it was going to be a straight up action film, which at the time it came out, I was in a film class, and I don't remember seeing previews for it, but I had known what the movie was just because I read a ton of reviews, and I believe it played at festivals. He won at Cannes, I believe, Best Director. It was getting a lot of great reviews, but then I remember being in film class, and the movie came up, and all these guys were like, "Oh, that movie sucked, like, it wasn't an action movie, like, it's called Drive, and there's no, like..."
There's two driving scenes.
Yeah, no car chases and stuff, like, so... Yeah, I do think we watched the trailer, and it was pretty misleading. It made it seem like it was going to be non-stop action.
It also gives away plot plot points that if you had not seen them beforehand, they would surprise you.
Mm-hmm.
If you did not see those plot points in the trailer,
Mm-hmm.
those plot points would surprise. They would be effective.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you haven't seen the movie yet, don't watch the trailer. Just watch the movie.
Yeah. I hold this film in such high regard.
It's one of my favorites of all time.
It doesn't matter how many times I watch it, I'm always affected emotionally by it.
Definitely.
And just the idea of this character who hardly speaks and lives in isolation, I feel like I kind of identify with that just because I'm a quiet person.
I'm not.
And, like, if you see my apartment, I live a very minimalist lifestyle, and I think of my apartment as like my nest. I'm always elsewhere, and I've always kind of related and understood this character, and it does bring a lot of sadness in me.
I relate to Driver in the sense that he always feels like he's fighting his nature.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, if you come from a certain place, or you've been through certain things, your nature is your worst enemy,
Mm-hmm.
and I can relate to that fully. I've been there, I've experienced that, and I'm sure a lot of you out there listening, especially in the area where we're all living,
Mm-hmm.
will probably completely understand. And hopefully this film has that effect on you that it has on us, where your nature doesn't have to be who you are.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of the transformation in this. The first of his transformation trilogy.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, after this movie, because Nicolas Winding Refn has made some great movies.
Wonderful movies.
He and Ryan Gosling teamed up again after this. They made another movie, a very polarizing movie, I'd say, called Only God Forgives.
She says polarizing because we do a podcast on films that use symbolism specifically, and I still don't understand this movie at all.
Either people love it or hate it, and
I don't have a problem with it. I just still don't get it. Like, I've watched it a few times, and I still have a hard time with it because Drive is symbolic. It uses a lot of visual imagery to tell its story. Only God Forgives. You get none of the actual story from dialogue. All of the actual story is given in visual metaphor, and it is a difficult film. It is a challenging film.
And so after that, they have this great friendship, and Ryan Gosling went on to make his own movie. I forget, it was 2014, a movie called Lost River, and he was really inspired by Winding Refn. So it's like this very surreal movie that he shot entirely in Detroit. And it also stars Christina Hendricks, and also for genre fanatics, it has Barbara Steele, who is in many classic horror movies.
Yeah, you're throwing that one. That's one that's over my head.
And actually, the main actor in it was recently in Overlord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's that?
He was the young guy that has the transformation scene.
The British guy?
Uh-huh.
Huh.
Yeah, he was in it, and then I can't say her name, Saoirse Ronan? How do you say her name?
Oh, I don't know.
The girl from Lady Bird, she's in it. There's a lot of people in that movie. Matt Smith. But yeah, he spent the summer in Detroit one year, so all these restaurants,
that's pretty cool.
We're seeing him. He's a great tipper, from what I've
Yes.
heard. A very kind guy. But yeah, if you can find Lost River, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's just like a surreal art film.
Visual, yeah.
But I really enjoyed it. But yeah, you can tell he was definitely inspired by the work that they've done together.
Definitely. And So hopefully, the next 2 films in the Transformation trilogy are stay tunes. Would be Valhalla Rising,
which I've never seen,
starring Mads Mikkelsen, which has, I believe, no dialogue for the first 25 minutes of the film, and then another film which, if you're a horror fan, you might like, because it was Refn's attempt at horror, which went way too far. And that is Neon Demon. So who's it? January Jones?
No.
Amber Heard.
No.
What?
It was Al Fanning.
Yes, there's 3 of them.
Al Fanning.
Damn it. Google.
Oh, who's the other actress? She was a child actress.
Forget it. I'm looking at
I know. But yeah, that movie totally takes a crazy turn. Jenna Malone is in it.
That's just a fun name to say.
But yeah, and he is working on something else right now too. I think a
Elle
TV
Fanning,
series.
Abby Lee Kershaw. Christina Hendricks is in that one also.
Yes.
Jenna Malone. Bella Heathcote.
Who's the photographer guy?
Well, there's Keanu Reeves and Desmond Harrington.
Desmond Harrington.
Yeah.
He looks so creepy in that movie.
Yes. I don't know if it's a weird makeup.
I don't know. He just looked really creepy.
Those are stay tunes. Maybe not the next consecutive episodes, but we will be doing them. Definitely. Because Refn is such an influential director for us. Me as an aspiring filmmaker, writer, etc. So, that is our first episode.
Our very first.
Of Themes to Be Seen. Comment, rate, review, tell your friends. We do have live events. We had our first live event last night. And it went pretty well.
We had a private screening of Jordan Peele's film Us.
Which we had a hard time getting it together. But it worked out.
I'm still thinking about it. I still feel like I haven't pieced it all together.
That's a stay tuned. That's a different episode.
Yeah.
But as of right now, hopefully we can get another live event going soon. If you see a film that you think might have some symbolism and themes in it that may need digging, let us know. Like a film coming out in theaters soon. Not soon. Within the next. We might have to wait like 3-4 months before we can do another live event, because that was difficult.
Yeah.
But if you see another film maybe within the next year coming out that might be challenging with some symbolism in it, let us know. Tell us. We might try to work that into a live event. We'll see what we can do. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
And adopt, don't shop.